Business ownership has never been hotter, but how do you do it? That's where I come in. Allow me to guide you on your journey. Welcome to Ion Franchise. Sponsored by Leap Brands. From executive recruiting to hourly staff, Leap is your one-stop shop for all of your franchise talent. Hello and welcome back to another fabulous episode of Ion Franchising. I'm your host, Lance Graulich. I always love talking to amazing founders of brands. Well, guess what? We're going to switch it up a little bit. I love to talk to people outside the world of franchising about their entrepreneurial journey. And today, have I got an amazing founder for you. He's the host of the Founder Podcast. Chris Lee, welcome to the show, my friend.
Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it is going to be a good time, I'm sure, because you're going to tell us everything.
Oh, baby. Let's go. Let's go.
So how did Chris become an entrepreneur in the first place?
You know, it was really my love for sales that got me turned that direction. I always say that sales is kind of the gateway drug to entrepreneurship. And so, age of 18, I'm end of my junior year, heading into my senior year. I'm attending a local community college. This program called Running Start, and there's an advertisement on a bulletin. It's got a little thing that you can tear off a number, and it says, make at least $13 an hour. And I'd never seen the words at least before. And I was just like, what is this at least they speak of? And, you know, there was, at the time, I think we were minimum wage was like $6.50 or $7. And most of the jobs that I had worked up until that point, which I'd worked quite a few since the age of 9, had only really paid me minimum wage. And so I was very intrigued, took the number, gave a phone call, and lo and behold, it was Cutco Knives on the other side. And so, you know, went through the interview process. They made me feel like I made it, and, you know, everybody else just fell off when in reality they probably all quit and, you know, but, you know, shortly thereafter started selling it to friends, family, referrals, and found a love for being able to go in, create value into an hour. You know, I could walk out in an hour sitting with a wife of a farmer and walk out with a check of $1,000 with 25% commission. And, you know, that was more money than I'd ever made in my life. And I thought, man, this seems pretty cool. But at that point in my life, I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. Sales was a way to get to the goals that I had in my life.
At least $13 an hour.
Yeah, at least $13. But, you know, but yeah, initially it was just a means to an end. I was planning on being a doctor my whole life. Studied later in college. After I was married, was taking the MCAT, all this stuff. And then at the same time, I was doing sales and eventually got convinced that I didn't want to go to school for the rest of my life.
Got it.
So that's kind of where it all began. But where I found a lot of success was in door-to-door sales and going out, knocking on somebody's door, you know, changing their state, catching their attention, identifying a need, solving a problem, closing them on that. And I got really good at it. You know, when I was going to college, there was summers I was making between $300,000 and $400,000.
Yeah,
in a 3 to 4 month period, and I'm like, man, this seems pretty cool.
Yeah. So what were you going to college for? Were you going to be a doctor?
I was going to be a doctor. Yeah. Yep. Studying biology, chemistry, all that stuff.
All right. So for those that don't know, you founded a pretty incredible brand. Tell us that story and how that came about.
Yeah. So when I dropped out of college was in 2007, 2008. I didn't found my really successful brand until 2017. Okay, so there's a big bridge in between of founding businesses, figuring out what works, losing everything, bankruptcy for $2.2 million, car repo on my driveway, less than $1,000 in my bank account, like all that stuff. And then eventually going back and working for somebody else, studying what they were doing. That's kind of the Reader's Digest version. But eventually in 2017, I took a playbook that I had studied and created myself of how I was going to build a business by design, and launched it out of my garage in the fall of 2017. And saw a lot of success right out of the gate because we did everything on purpose, from the culture and the brand into what we were investing money into, right? So one thing I learned over the years of my experience working for others, failure in business, small startups, was that you only should spend money on the things that are going to get you a really good return, right? A lot of business owners struggle in spending things that make them look good to their friends.
A fancy sign.
Right? Fancy sign, even like their own personal car, the nice watch or whatnot, wearing the clothes, saying, look at me, community and friends, I'm a success, versus, investing the dollars into marketing and scale and people and everything else. And so that's what we chose to do. We operated on my garage. My garage was better than most. We had 3,500 square foot shop.
Yeah.
And, but initially, it was very much an unfinished garage, and we crammed people in there. And so we didn't have any rent and didn't really have much cost on utilities. And we invested things into marketing and brand to our end consumer. We looked like $1 billion, right? We pull up in the nice wrapped vehicle, and our online presence and our video team and everything else was top tier. Meanwhile, like I said, we're operating out of the garage.
Yeah.
And so we were there for 2.5 years. By the time I moved us out of our garage, we had done $75 million in business.
All right. So there's a lot to unpack here. Yeah. So, by the way, Steve Jobs started in a garage, right? No, nothing wrong with that.
And I actually took a lot of pride in that. Like, I would always tell people, like, hey, look, Apple started in a garage.
That's right.
So, like, this is our story.
So you talked about doing things on purpose, and I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that you said that, because there are a lot of people, it's okay to have a business plan etched in pencil,
right,
that will change.
Right.
And that's on purpose. You're erasing and changing and modifying. Talk a little bit about that, and talk a little bit about the brand, by the way.
Yeah, so when we talk about purpose, it's really by design. And so I'm a big proponent of, like, when you start a business, you have to create a 5-year vision for what the business is going to be. And typically that 5-year vision starts out with, okay, how much revenue do I want to be doing in 5 years? And then back into a organizational or an accountability chart that supports that revenue, right? And so example would be, all right, I want to be doing $100 million a year in revenue 5 years from now. How much revenue does, and usually you're going to back it into with sales. And for us in our industry, it's direct sales. We weren't door to door, but it's like salespeople that are interacting with a customer and getting them to make a decision on our product, which was a solar systems for residences. And so we knew that, an average salesperson could do $1 million in sales, right, on an annual basis. And so if I needed 100 million, I needed 100 salespeople.
Yeah.
And then you back it into the law of management, which says you should never manage more than 3 to 8 people. And the lower you're on the totem pole, the more people you can manage, the higher you should be less, right? And so building that whole structure of, this is what my sales structure will look like in 5 years from now. And in order to support that with crews and installs and permitting and financing and everything else, right? Like really going through the mental.
Yeah.
It's a real mental exercise, and not one that most people are willing to go through.
Yeah.
Of like really trying to imagine what that business looks like. And you really can only understand what that business will look like if you have experience, right? If you've worked for companies that have done it, or you've read and educated yourself really well on the subject matter. And so building that framework, now when you go into your people on day one and you got 2 employees in the office, and you're like, hey, look, in 5 years, we're going to be doing 100 million a year. And for one, they're going to think you're crazy.
Yeah.
Right. But which I think is a key to anybody that wants to go doing something incredible, right? Like if their people don't think they're crazy initially, they're not dreaming big enough.
Yeah.
Right. So one, they're going to think you're crazy, but with them thinking you're crazy and you're saying this is all, and you actually show them the roadmap. This is how the organization is going to look. This is what we're going to have to do month 1, month 12, month 18, right? In order to be on pace to get there. Now people start buying in, and then they start taking action that's in accordance to a big, crazy, and hairy, audacious goal, right? And so that was the the vision aspect of building on purpose, but then it was the culture aspect of building on purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like the way that we treated our people, the human interaction, like
talk really specifically about people and in the early stages, especially. You're painting the picture of this vision for everybody,
right?
And you're bringing these employees on. I'm usually talking to people about franchise systems where there's a vision, but there's someone that's already built this brand somewhere. In your case, you're doing this from scratch.
But even with franchisees, right? Like there's got to be a vision. It's not like if you're bringing in employees, you're like, hey, look, yes, we're a franchise of Taco Bell or whatever, right? But we are going to have 100 Taco Bells in 5 years.
Yes.
Right. And what does that mean for you, Mr. Employee that's coming in and willing to work for minimum wage right now and wants to work up the ladder? I'm going to need leadership in place. In fact, this is the roadmap that is going to look like it. And for us to successfully run 100 franchisees, we're not going to be able to just, lean on the franchisors of Taco Bell. We're going to have to build our own leadership structure. We're going to have to go in. And so eventually I'm going to need a VP here and a district manager here and this, that, and the other. And there's going to be one of two ways we're going to get there. Either one, someone like you is going to work their way up the ladder, or two, we're going to have to hire in talent that will get there. And the opportunity is going to be available to anyone that takes the bull by the horns, right? And so like, that's the vision that I painted for my people. In fact, sitting behind the camera are a couple of my previous employees from my solar business, right? Levi Ringo, he was employee number 8 of 1,100 people. And this was the vision that I was painting to Levi when he came in and worked for $13.50 an hour, which at that point was like 50 cents or $1 above minimum wage, right? And I said, hey, look, this is a trajectory. This is where we're going to go. And, and so like that aspect is just like so imperative. You're going to go and grow anything, whether it's a franchise, any type of business, is that you get the buy-in of the dreams. Like people don't want a paycheck. That's I think the number one greatest misconception of business is that employees are there for a paycheck. Yeah, they want that. They need that. They got to pay their bills. But what they really want is they want to buy into a dream. They want to be part of something that develops them as a human. They want to be part of something that helps them grow physically, economically, with their associations and their spirituality, right? And so like day one, I'm preaching this and I'm telling people, look, I know you're here you think you're here for a paycheck, but I'm here to help you make you a better contributor to society.
Yeah.
And like my people have always been customer number one.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you realize that you have two customers, you have your employees as customer number one and your end user is customer number two, and that the number one thing that you always have to make sure you take care of. So it's always business first, right? If I do not take care of my business, so I don't make proper decisions from a financial standpoint that are going to make me profitable, that are going to help this thing not only survive, but thrive, I can't take care of my customer number one, which is my employee.
Right.
And if I do this properly, which takes care of my customer number one, they will take care of my customer number two, which is my end user.
Yeah.
And so like that's something that I understood from a very early stage because of many years of failure. And that was where the focus was. And so, things that we did were like, every single morning I'd walk in the office and I'd give everyone a high five and ask them how their day was. And, that was easy when we had 5 people, very difficult when I had 400 people showing up to my corporate headquarters.
Yeah.
But it was something that I committed to and was dedicated in creating that culture and that connection with my people.
So how did you know how to scale this thing? Because Levi was employee 8.
Right.
You went to 1,100.
Right.
What changed? More bosses? You gave that equation of add X amount of.
Well, how did I know starts with that, like I believed it was possible initially. Like most people, 1, don't believe it's possible, and 2, aren't willing to take the risk, right? And the reason I believed it was possible is because I had spent years not taking risk and being scared of growth. After my bankruptcy, there were several years where I was micromanaging 5 or 6 employees. I didn't want to grow, didn't want to invest money, didn't want to do any of those things. And it wasn't until I went and I worked for 3 other businesses over 4.5 years, in which with the specific purpose to study how these guys were growing. And I went and I worked for high growth businesses. In fact, over 3 years, I experienced 2 different IPOs with the businesses that I worked for. And I worked in very high level positions and was studying exactly what the CEO was doing and all those things. So how did I know how to do it? Like, I saw it, I studied it, I learned it. I spent a lot of money on mentors that and coaches that told me that I could do it, right? And then it was just investing in the right things. Like, going back to what I previously stated, most people don't grow and most people don't have success because they rob the business of growth to fulfill their own ego.
Yes.
And so, you know, because a lot of people, they have this limiting belief of like $250,000. It used to be, you know, 9 figures will take care of me for the rest of my life, right? That was the 1991 version of 9 figures. You know, the top 1% in 1991 made 100,000. Fast forward to 2018, the top 1% made 372,000, right? So we were taught when we were young that this was a dream, and then still chasing a dream of our forefathers.
Yeah.
Right. And so the issue is we have these limiting beliefs around money and everything else of like, what is success? What is like awesome? And so like, once we start achieving what that limiting belief was, whether it was $250,000 or 373,000 or $500,000 or $1 million, we're like, well, I hit my limiting belief of what success is. Now I got to go live what a successful life looks like. I got to go buy the watch, the car, the house, the vacations, the everything else, right? So everything is deemed by this limiting belief that we have versus like, I had already gone through all that crap and be like, okay, I am not, there is no limit. I'm going to go build a $10 billion business, right? And so when I start making $250,000, I'm not going to change my salary. I'm not going to do any of these things. I'm going to take all that profit and I'm going to dump it back into the one thing that pushes a business: marketing, right? Marketing and brand is the one thing that is going to get me more business. And as I get more business, I go and I build out my operations, right? And so for me, it's like the rule that I've always tried to live by is take previous month's profit and dump it all into marketing.
Yeah.
Right. And how do I determine previous month's profit? One, I limit my expenses as much as possible. I don't take a big salary. I don't do, all these other things. And so then I can quickly take that, and because I know that if I go and spend it, I can get a 10 to 50x return for every dollar. So why would I take it off the table when I can go make 10 to 50 times more with the same amount of money? And so like, that's really where it all stemmed. And then of my years of studying behavior and culture and leadership and everything else, like in 2015, 2 years before I started my business, I started spending a lot of money on my personal development.
Yeah.
And since 2015, I've spent about $1 million on masterminds and coaches and events and books and seminars and everything else. And really, I mean, that was the number one game changer for me.
Yeah. That's absolutely incredible. So fast forward with SoulGen.
Yep.
You built this company over what period of time to 1,100 employees?
Yeah. So 2017, end of 2017, we launched it out of my garage. We sold it. We had an initial transaction in May of 2022, 4.5 years later. We were that year of 2020. So we sold it at a valuation of $180 million to private equity. That year, so private equity came in mid-year. I continued to run it. That year we did $233 million in revenue.
Yeah.
We were deemed 6th fastest growing company in the nation, any privately held company in the nation by Financial Times. And Inc. named us the 12th fastest growing company in the nation.
Impressive.
Yeah.
I love it. So when people listen to this story, there are people that are excited, inspired, maybe even motivated.
Right.
Well, if this guy can do it, but then they start thinking, wait a second, this guy's not like me. What if somebody's an engineer? Maybe they don't have the people skills or sales ability that you have. What do you say to those folks?
Well, here's the beauty is there's a variety of different personalities in the world. I love the DISC assessment because it really helps me understand there's no such thing as perfect people. There's only perfect couples, perfect teams, and perfect organizations. No matter where you're at on the DISC assessment, whether you're a high S, low C, a high D, high I like me, wherever you're at, you need other people to go and make your dreams come true.
Yeah.
Right. And so the same goes for you. If you're an engineer or whatnot, maybe you're an SC on the personality scale, go find your DI. He's out there. He's or she's out there, and you can go, you can hire these people, you can partner with these people, you can go and do these crazy things. But here's what I've learned over my experience of anything. A true principle, when followed, I don't care how smart or dumb you are, you will find success. I have had my mind blown over and over and over again as I've attended events and masterminds and everything of how many stupid people are making a crap ton of money or having a crap ton of success, right? And it because you go and you look at them, you're like, why? It's not because they're smart. It's not because they're intelligent. Sure, you may look at me like, oh, he's well-spoken or intelligent. Maybe. I would say, God's blessed me with a few things, but it's not that's made me successful. It's the application of true principles, of taking risk, of investing money in marketing, investing money into people, focusing on people. You can do that no matter what your personality is, right? Like, once again, I've seen so many stupid people that just take risks over and over and over again until something works, and then they have massive success, and they stuck to it. They said no to all the opportunities and said yes to that one thing and dug deep, and they hit oil. And it's just like, you are not smart, but you're worth way too much money.
I love this. But these are the people that I deal with every day. I deal with a lot of corporate folks that are exploring business ownership, and they're scared out of their minds.
And I would venture to say that the people that are employees are actually usually more smart, right? Like me as an entrepreneur, like, I have success because I'm just dumb enough to believe that my vision is true, right? And I'm just dumb enough to take the risk without thinking about all the potential downside.
And it only needs to work once.
Right, and it only needs to work once. And so, yeah, to your point, like, you got these engineers, these super smart individuals, or they think they're dumb or whatever else, but, like, they overanalyze everything.
Yes.
Right? Like, stop the analysis. Like, it's good and it's great, but, like, this is what I encourage everybody to do. Start a side hustle. Find something that works and is repeatable while you're still working for somebody else. Do it over and over and over again. And if it continues to yield results, go all in, go deep.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's a simple formula. Like, and everything that you try will not work. Right? Like, I have done everything from flipping houses to flipping cars, having bees and cattle, and a coupon book, and a medical pendant company, and home security, and pest control, and solar businesses. Like I have done so many things, and most of them didn't work, right? And I would try it. Is it repeatable? Is it scalable? Can I do this over and over again? Is there a total addressable market that will continue to buy this over and over again, right? Like, that's really how simple it is, and it doesn't take like this like huge business plan. In fact, I've never really written a business plan in my life. I've only ever built spreadsheets that kind of broke down projected expenses.
Yeah. Well, and it all starts with financials. What do I think this thing's going to do? And as you said, you back into it. Now, what have you been doing since you exited SoulGen?
Yeah, that's a great question. So initially I worked for them for a year, still had some equity. Was able to do another transaction at a much higher valuation January of the following year, so January 2023. April of last year, 2023, March, I was in a terrible car accident that really helped me like put things into perspective and like question what I want to do for the rest of my life. And, head-on collision with the drunk driver coming at me 130 miles an hour with two of my sons. And we walked away, and I said, well, God's got something different for me. And so I struggled with what I wanted to do. And 6 weeks later, I stepped down as the CEO. I now still operate as the chairman of the board for that business. So I have still some equity left on the table there. But founded a podcast, started filming a podcast, and I'm the founder and CEO of what we call the Founder Project. And so the Founder Project, we work with entrepreneurs. So we work with high-level entrepreneurs that are looking at exiting their business, and then we work with people in the home service space. And in the home service space, we have courses and masterminds and everything else where I've taken my framework that has been used all across 3 different home service companies. All 3 had 9-figure exits. And so I went and I recorded that same strategy, which is my COLE framework: culture, offer, accountability, and leadership, broken down into 140 videos and how you go and transform any business. And I've filmed my life's work on video, and now I run courses and I coach people and I invest into, so we run a private equity fund. We invest into different home service brands and other brands that we believe in.
I love it.
And man, it's, yeah. And then I get to do things like this, which is really cool. Speak on your
Vegas in my house.
Yeah. It's what gets me excited and passionate about life.
Yeah. Well, I love what you're doing now, especially because I have plenty of friends to probably introduce you to.
Love it.
Help franchisors grow, help franchisees.
Absolutely.
So everybody talks about scale, and you talked a little bit about the people application. There's a lot of people all over social media talking about how to scale a business. It obviously starts with an idea.
Yep.
It starts with having the right people in places. What other tips or advice can you give to people? You have to have the vision. Doesn't work without the vision.
Yep. People, so your people are very important to the whole thing, right? Like, you can't scale without your people, and people will bleed for a business over 2 things. 1 is culture, and 2 is a piece of the pie. And so one thing that I have been able to find a lot of success is properly structuring motivation and equity pieces for other people within the business. I would never want 100% of anything. In fact, I've never met a billionaire that did 100% on his own, right? Like, if you look at all the great businesses, all the whatnot, there were co-founders and great teams or incentive equity pools for employees.
Nobody got hired by themselves.
Right. And so I understood that from previous experience working for these 3 other businesses. And so from a get-go, I attracted an incredible talent to work for low wages and a potential piece of the pie. And so because of that, I built a phenomenal management team. And so although me and my main business partner, Daryl, we've been business partners on and off for 20 years, we were the majority holders of the equity. We had 11 others that had equity and were made multimillionaires when we did our transaction.
Fantastic.
And I'll tell you what, there is nothing cooler than with the boys. Like, and the girls too, but in this circumstance, it was with the boys, and like that for me is like where I get my why from. Is doing it with my team.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to actually ask that. So today, thank goodness you're healthy again. Everything.
Yeah.
You're good. Your kids are good. Your family's good.
Yeah, we're great.
So what is really next? You're obviously motivated by helping people at this point.
Yeah.
Doing what you're doing.
Yeah. So I'm very passionate about changing the world through entrepreneurship. So as I mentioned earlier, I believe in the whole home human approach. I call it the founder's core. There's a personal core and a business core. So the personal core is you got to eat your peas daily, your physical economic association, your spirituality, and then your coal framework, which to keep the fire burning, you got to feed it coal, right? Culture, offer, accountability, leadership. I believe that when founders and entrepreneurs focus on the physical economic association, spiritual development of their people, they drastically change the world. And I am on a mission to help entrepreneurs focus on that and be wildly successful, making a ton of money and profit so they can scale up, influence more, and do those type of things. And I want that to reach over 2 billion people. And so like that's what gets me out of bed every single morning. It's what gets me excited. I love, I'll get a text message from like one of my former employees that worked for me on my solar business. And he'd be like, dude, I've lost 120 pounds. Like, and he's like, and if it wasn't for our conversation that we had that one day, like I would have never changed my life.
I love it.
It's like, dude, like that, like we're in the solar business, right? Like we're not in the health business. We're not in the weight loss business, but like
health and wealth go together.
Yeah, health and wealth. But then like you got another guy that'll come and be like, dude, I addressed the issue with my wife and like our relationship is better than ever. Or like, dude, I finally found God, or whatever it is. And like that, as you could tell, as it gets me emotional, like that feeds me more than any money or any possession I would ever in the world.
Well, and that's what makes it all worth it, right?
Yeah.
You know? So give some advice to folks listening. Again, I talk to people every day that have a difficult time getting out of their own way.
Yeah.
They're in a job they can't stand. They keep missing their kid's soccer game or baseball game or dance recital. So they don't have the financial freedom. They don't have the time freedom. They might be scared. Franchising, as you know, can be a very safe way for people to exit the corporate world, or for that matter, stay. But what is it? What is that advice for the different personalities? You mentioned DISC earlier, which I'm a big fan of. But what is the advice you would give, sort of broad brush, yet specific enough to say, you know, is it just their own inner discipline or focus?
It's a great question.
Drive?
So, you know, the thing, having coached and consulted a lot of businesses, right? Like everybody will want to come work with me based off of my business success or what they think that is going to happen to their business. But what ends up happening is we always work on their personal, right? Like people don't have business problems. They have personal issues that are limiting them from going and taking, it's a mindset, it's discipline, it's all the things. And so like going back to the core four of personal, like the number one thing that you can do to start going in the right direction is start taking care of your physical body, right? Because the way we experience everything else, economic association and spirituality, is through this physical body, right? And so I can't go have a great relationship or association with my kid playing catch out in the yard if I'm 400 pounds. I just can't, right? And economically, I'm not going to do great if I can't even control myself at the dinner table, right? Like, so one is like, go and start having some wins physically and don't compare yourself against anybody else, right? Like we all have different physical limitations and issues, but don't give yourself excuses either. And so like, don't compare yourself. It's like, am I better than I was yesterday? Did I put in the effort? Did I hit the gym? Did I make better decisions around my health and what I consumed or whatnot? Like you start winning a little bit there. It will flow into everything else. You will start making better decisions at work. You will put in that one more phone call or that one more door or spend that one more dollar on advertising or whatnot because you've started to build this level of discipline. And so, and there's just something about like mindset when you go, for me, it's early in the morning where I go and I put in an hour lifting and 30 to 45 minutes on the elliptical where just my mind gets right. And it's just like, I am doing the hard thing first and I'm doing it. And so when hard things, present themselves throughout the day, it's like, dude, this is just like the gym. Hit it square in the face and I'm good to go. And once again, this doesn't require a 6% body fat or, looking like Mr. Olympia. Like for me, I'm a type 1 diabetic, and so I have different physical limitations than everybody else. But like this right now I'm on the trajectory of the best path of Chris Lee. I'm not the best. I'm not perfect Chris Lee. I'm not where I want to be, but as long as I'm trending, like that's got to be the goal and everything. And so like, take care of yourself first. Once you start doing that, and then you can start studying discipline and economics and strategy and everything else. So like that's probably the biggest piece of advice.
Awesome advice. And Chris Lee is trending right here on Ion Franchise.
Yeah, let's go.
So final thoughts, final words of wisdom. You've dropped so much knowledge and great stuff. So final thoughts for future entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, the question that's always motivated me is, what would I do if I had no fear, right? Like if fear wasn't a limiting factor, there was no such thing as failure, what are the actions that I would take in business, with my spouse, with my relationships, with my spirituality? Like, what is, like I understand we all experience fear. Fear is totally natural, and it's good to experience it. But always imagine a world where it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And do that.
Love it. Chris, you're amazing.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
If you're ready to talk about franchise opportunities, hit the link below to schedule a call. My services are free. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.
Well,